Hi again, and let's move on now to chapter 10. This is customer retention and measurement of satisfaction. Uh, this has got to do all about customers and how we able to retain them and the importance of retaining customers versus acquiring new ones. And in today's world, with all that is going on, certainly to retain customers is a huge important factor in how the world will be looked upon in 6 months. And if customers have to be reacquired by companies, it'd be very expensive, and no matter what, it's going to be very expensive. Or if companies, be it an Amazon or be it an Apple, if they can retain customers, how much more easier that for them is to get back into economical growth in 4 to 6 months from today. So if you look at customer retention and the definition of customer retention, certainly want you all to look at the chapters. The PDF is there with you for you in Omnivox. You have all that you can take a look at. And so here we go. So customer retention, what is the definition? It's the continuous attempt to satisfy and keep current customers actively involved in conducting business. Certain companies do this very well, as you know. A lot of major companies know how to retain customers, and here in Canada there is a few. One comes into mind is Lululemon, which is a company that does yoga wear, and they are activewear, if you want to call it that, and they have a very strong, loyal retention system that works very well for them, and they know how to keep their customers in context. And what other companies, certainly the Apples of the world, the Microsofts, and the Amazons come into play, or come into our thoughts when we talk about companies that do their utmost to keep customers. One important factor that comes into play is churn, or the churn rate. So this is the definition: is the number of customers who leave a business in a year's time divided by the number of new customers in the same period. This is called a churn rate formula. So as you can see, customers over the customers at the beginning of the year, a month period, let's say times 100%, you can see the churn rate for the period, month or year. This is how it's calculated. We're not going to go into detail of what this is and how this works. Certainly the higher it is, the worse it is. As you can see, if you would reverse those numbers, it would certainly not show the same way. So you really have to look at that. You want to lessen the number of customers that leave, and you want to retain the customers. In this case, what have you started with, and how many have left is your churn rate. Why is this important? Well, this is critical to measure. It's a critical measure, I should say, for a company's success and seeing exactly where it's going. So as we can see, a lot of companies use analytics and statistics to decide what direction they should take. And in today's world, again, this is not going to go away. It's going to be a subject at hand throughout this course. In today's world, with what's happening, a churn rate is certainly important, and measuring everything today is certainly going to be critical for the future of a lot of companies that might not survive the 6 months period that they're considering before this gets back to normal. So why is it important? Because, well, why do customers leave? Why is customer service important? Why are we looking at churn? Because customer service plays the biggest part when it comes to customers leaving a company or leaving a brand. So if a brand is capable of keeping customers, one comes to mind is Amazon. In my case, if I may say personally, I've had absolutely no issue with that company versus other companies that at this point will remain nameless, but have created issues when it comes to customer service on little things like a $10 rebate, let's say, making a big thing about going through a procedure. We talked about leadership last time, where an employee will not make a decision based on company policy, which is okay. But when you're talking small little things like a $5 or $10 rebate, or to exchange the product, certainly some people could make a decision easier for customers to retain them. This has to be inscribed in a company policy. Unfortunately, a lot of companies don't have that policy, and creates a lot of animosity, and this is why customers leave. As you can see, a lot more than quality or price. So the defection rate, ones that do leave, is important also statistic that companies look at. That's the percentage of customers who leave a business in 1 year. This is going to be really, excuse the expression, nuts this year, with so many companies closing down, specifically restaurants, airplanes, airlines for sure. They're looking at this now, how to get customers back, because certainly they have lost just about every single customer they have. So this is a big issue, again, going forward, the defection rate. Really what we're striving for, and what companies like the Amazons and the Apples strive for, is CLV. And CLV, customer lifetime value, plays a huge part, where if they were able to give you a little discount to keep you satisfied, they know that they will retain you and you will stay with them for a very long period of time. So really is the net present value of the profits a customer generates over the average customer life. So an average customer life, it could be easily 30 years to 40 years. So calculate for yourself the number one place you go shopping, how much money do you spend there? A good example I've always used is Costco for one, or even coffee. How much coffee do you drink? Tea, coffee, food. Where do you go buy it, and how often do you go there? Now calculate that in a period of a month, calculate that in a period of a year, and calculate that period of a lifetime of, let's say, 30 years, and you'll see why companies strive for customers to be CLV, because that's really what they're looking for, because that means that they're succeeding and they will be around for 30 years from now. So we'll get back to that in just a little minute, more about CLV and how companies work at that. But first, let's look at determine the need for the customer retention program. So these are questions that you would, I'm not going to go through them all, but you have them here. Excuse me, is what customers really, questions that you have to ask yourself when it comes to determining the need, why you need to have a program to retain customers, right? So one question would be, is customer retention your primary management objective? If it's not, then right away you have an issue. Other questions would be, do you train and retrain your customer service providers? Like we saw before, how important customer service is. Are they really trained to today's world? And certainly, again, in context of what's happening today, customer service has to be really retrained in 4 to 5 months to try to get back customers they've lost, or customers that they certainly have still have not lost only because they closed, but how do they keep them? Do you have employee turnover problems? I could use an example here, but I won't. But a lot of examples that are around that there's certain companies know how to keep employees, and some companies just don't know how. And you can see the satisfaction in customers based upon that when they don't see the same familiar faces. And when you don't see familiar faces, there's a lot more stress involved, and customers can see that too. Other questions, what is your current cost for acquiring a customer? We're going to talk about that in a minute, what that means. What is your current customer defection rate? All of what we saw before. How do you get lost customers back? How do you reacquire customers? Probably the most expensive part of customer service or sales or a business is how you get a customer back after you've lost them. This is really, really expensive. And just to give you an understanding, here you look at Starbucks, how they look at lifetime value. They have a whole bunch of case studies. They really average out their variables when it comes to customers. You can take a look at that. And just to go through it, you can see how different customers have different meanings, different values, and how they come up with averages and what they find out, what they have to do to keep customers. So there's a lot of these case studies that companies do to find out what they have to do, or how many customers come into the store, how often they come in, what is their worth, and how often do they buy, which is called the purchase cycle. So all these aspects come into play for a company like Starbucks or Costco or you name it. And it's even broken down in many aspects and ways, as we can see, when it comes to investing in good customers, how you keep good customers, and the chances of an average customer, what they buy versus a good customer. But the strive is always to find a way to keep customers, and not only that, but also to go from customers that are not satisfied to customers that are very satisfied. Very satisfied, spend more money, and create more value to a company. So a lot of companies strive for that. So if you look at cost to acquire, we talked about that before. Right now, is the research and the marketing costs that you need to apply in a company to reacquire a customer, right? This is very expensive, or to acquire a customer in this case. Right? So again, research and marketing are costs, and costs certainly are losses. When you look at promotion, that is also a cost, and the costs are not profits. So that just goes away. So you try to reduce marketing costs. Certainly, you try to reduce promotional costs, because that is really just floating in the wind, as you can say, and it's not coming back into your pocket. So this is really important to calculate the value of that customer to a company. Every company, depending on the product, the actual CAC, the cost to acquire a customer, varies. So let's take a look at what that means. So a CAC really is a sum of all sales and marketing expenses over the number of new customers added with all that money being spent. So in other words, if you spent, here I'll give you an example. If you spent $50,000 in marketing costs and you only acquired 100 customers, your cost to acquire a customer is $500. Now, there is some cases where this is a good price, or a good CAC, I should say. But I want you to think, where would this be a horrible, absolutely horrible CAC? If we just looked at Starbucks, so would you think a $500 CAC to acquire one customer is good? Absolutely, absolutely not. And where would you think this would be a good CAC? Okay, so think about that. So CAC is, do you want to lower it or increase it, like we just talked about? You certainly want to lower your CAC. Now, you want to keep also increasing customers, and you don't want to lose any existing ones, right? So here's a little table to show you what this means in today's world with what's going on with social media, and also the how one person can influence another just by simply talking about it, or having respect or leadership qualities. Certain people will follow and will purchase products based upon how they are influenced by somebody else. Could be a friend, family member, anybody that you might think is worthwhile listening to, could be easily influenced. So if you look at this chart, right, if you look at customer acquisition versus retention, this is money and time spent, all the way from research all the way to continuous support. You'll notice that in research, you would need to research how to, or like a marketing research or a market research. How would you research is how would you acquire customers? All your money will be spent here. There's not much to retain here to find out how to acquire customers at this level. So you go all the way down to continuous support, which is the opposite. Continuous support, really you want to spend all your money. This is considered an after-sales service, or it could be considered to be also customer service, all entwined in one. All your money and time is spent here, and this is where you want to do. But if you look right down the middle, you'll see where we saw just before, you really want to do a bit of both. You want to acquire and you want to retain. And today's world, the two big parts are word of mouth, 50-50. These are called influencers, and also content marketing. And content marketing has to do a lot with social media and got to do with acquiring customers or retaining customers through showing customers how the product works and how the product is beneficial to them. And through showing them how it works for them, we are influenced to buy it for ourselves. And word of mouth and content marketing, one thing that you have to pay attention to is that this is where the least amount of money, which is a cost when it comes to marketing, is used. So these two, as you can see, are right down the middle, and the least amount of money that's spent is right here. So if you want to continue, let's on the customer retention program. How do you have guidelines to do that? Well, you have to first and foremost examine who your customers are and what are their needs. Again, that word comes into play, and needs is a monster word when it comes to customer service, sales, after sales, everything that's got to do with customers. What is their need? Identify certain objectives to be realized by your program for the guidelines to have a retention program. You need to create a manageable program of customers retention. In other words, one that is flexible and easy to use. You need to create a culture. We talked about culture before. You need to create a customer service culture or a pro-customer service culture that stimulates customer interest. And you also have to determine a timeline for evaluation. This will you'll know like a churn rate to know exactly how many customers have retained. You would need to do this too. So what are sources of information to measure? You can measure in many ways. One of the most important ways today is surveys. There's other ones that you could use. How much sales you've have had in a period of time is very important too. All the way down to how people talk about you as a company or a service in social media. So what does it all mean, right? What measurement of satisfaction does that mean to your business? Well, we talked about loyalty and lifetime value. There you go. Customer relationships are certainly deepened. Customers know that we are interested in them and their wants and their needs. Improved product and service offerings. Certainly, you always have to come up with different products, just like Apple just announced, even in this world, that a new iPhone is about to be produced. So this is all critical for the future of companies. How do you measure all these things, right? New products. If there's a huge interest in new products, you know that there's a demand and you have loyal customers. So it's all about customer retention, right? How many you have kept them? What is your churn rate? What is your lifetime value? How low is your CAC? How low can your CAC be? By using methods like social media and by using methods like influencers, like word of mouth. Great. So this is chapter 10, and we'll have this online for you, and we'll move on to next chapter in the next video. Thank you.